Welcome everyone to Melfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 3 Episode 8. It's called Oubliette. So spoilers for the episode as always. And I did look up what Oubliette means. I was curious because I don't think they said it in the episode. It's a dungeon with only a trap door as an entrance according to Google. But, I mean, mainly I just wanted to see how to pronounce it. But good to know. Good to know there's a specific word for that type of dungeon. But anyway, so obviously, first things first, Jill states in this episode, I know her from Firefly and a couple other things, but mainly Firefly. So it was kind of fun seeing her, and she's very young here. She's playing a 15-year-old who gets kidnapped by this creepy guy who's a photographer who's got a history of doing this, all of which is done pretty well in terms of its creep factor. You know, him staring at her during the school photos and being in her bedroom that night. It's a lot of horror movie stuff of him being a creep. But obviously none of that's supernatural. None of that's X-Files-y or anything. The supernatural element comes from the fact that another woman across town seems to have some kind of physical psychic connection with the victim. She effectively has a seizure of sorts where she says some of the same lines as the victim does, as Amy does, while she's being kidnapped, or whilst the perpetrator's kidnapping her. He says something to the effect of, oh, no one will get in the way, no one will spoil this, and she says the same things, and because there's a witness to the kidnapping, there's like a sibling that sleeps in the same room, who hears some of this, they can put the two phrases sort of together, and this gets Mulder's brain going. In fact, the reason why he gets involved in this kidnapping is because of this weird connection to someone else. And it's not a random person either. We find out quite quickly that this other woman, who's named Lucy, was a victim herself of the same type of crime. And as the episode goes on, it's very clear at a certain point that it's the same perpetrator, right? The same guy who kidnapped her. They never found who did it. He went to a mental hospital for some time, but he's out now, and he's repeating history by kidnapping a new teenager. And Lucy, of course, is older now. She's in her late 30s or early 40s or whatever, and she is trying to move on from all of that, and she doesn't really want to help Mulder. She doesn't really recognize what's happening to her as feeling what the victim's going through. I guess I tripped up a little bit there when I was describing the whole incident where she's repeating what the killer, or the kidnapper says. Really, because for the most part, like, she actually experiences what the victim experiences. You know, when Amy feels something, Lucy feels it when it is connected to what's happening to her. So if she gets scratched, Lucy gets scratched. If she is cold in the dark basement she's put in when she's held kidnapped, Lucy feels cold. Lucy feels the claustrophobia. Lucy will feel all the different things that Amy's going through, Lucy feels. Which I guess is maybe a slight critique, that the line she repeats at the start is from the kidnapper, it's from the villain, rather than Amy the victim. And maybe that's a little inconsistent with the rest of the episode, now that I think about it. It's not a big complaint, certainly, but I only even noticed it there because I made that little mistake as I was describing that moment, because for the rest of the episode she does feel things that the victim's feeling, and not the bad guy. So, but that's the premise. That's what we're doing with this episode, and because not only did she say the things that the kidnapper said, she even coughs up or has a nosebleed whilst she's having this seizure, and most of the blood is actually belonging to the victim. Somehow her blood has ended up at this diner where Lucy works, and Mulder's the only one, of course, who's leaping to some weird connection between them, and he's going down that rabbit hole very quickly, and Scully, as per usual, is pretty skeptical of the whole thing. And, you know, presented with the facts, the only assumption is that somehow she is maybe working with the kidnapper. Scully theorizes, oh, maybe, you know, she formed a bond with them in the way that, you know, someone forms a bond with their captor, or, you know, like, it just, you know, that kind of idea of the Stockholm syndrome or something like that. But of course Mulder doesn't feel that way, because of course he doesn't. He's Mulder. He has to go with the spooky options. In fact, he even references that early on because Scully admits that this other person, this other woman across town saying the same thing is pretty spooky. And he's like, well, that's my name. So that's the premise of the episode. We're investigating and trying to save this girl. So there's like a real ticking time clock. There's an innocent victim who needs to be saved and might be in trouble if she isn't. Admittedly, the kidnapper does seem to like to keep his victims trapped for a long, long time, but there's a couple of little caveats to that. One, of course, she's going to go through a lot of trauma if she's kept captive for a long time, because we see the effects of that on Lucy. Lucy is scared. She's scared to be in a hospital room because it's too confined a space. She's clearly very traumatized by everything she went through, including, you would assume, they never quite say it too explicitly, but later on, when she's describing what she feels from Amy, she does say, oh, he's not touched her yet, which would imply that Lucy was touched repeatedly, I assume, throughout those years that she was held captive before she was able to escape. So, like, that side of it gives us a bit of a ticking time clock to try and get to this girl before she goes through the same horror. Obviously, being kidnapped and taken to this place is already pretty traumatic, but more horrors await that are going to be longer lasting potentially if they don't get to her. And on top of that, the kidnapper, when he starts to worry that he's being followed, apparently there's a good chance he might just kill her to move on, because if he can't have her to himself, he doesn't want anyone to have her, kind of thing. So those are the stakes that we're dealing with. So there's a good sense of the ticking time clock of we've got like something good to accomplish and we need to try and succeed. But there's a more nuanced layer to it as well because of the character of Lucy, which I'll talk about first probably. But I guess I should just say if I liked the episode or not, and I did. I thought this was a pretty solid concept for an episode, mainly due to two reasons. One, the X-Files tends to be pretty decent at doing the creepy serial killer, stalker type characters, and this guy very much fits into that mold, and you've got kind of the 90s synth, like, you know, tense music playing whenever he's staring or anything like that. A lot of low lighting on his face. But you also have, because he's a photographer, they used the sound effect that was used in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It became like kind of a signature of that franchise. And I don't even know if the sound comes from a camera. Obviously, you get the camera flash, and that's definitely obviously a camera sound. But there's kind of like almost like a grating noise afterwards. I assume because it's always after a camera flash, both in Texas Chainsaw and in this, that it is some sort of old school camera noise, but nothing that we're maybe used to for modern cameras. But that kind of like, kind of noise. I don't even, it's like a grinding stringed metal kind of noise that comes after it. But my mind went straight to Texas Chainsaw. That's where my mind went. So obviously they wanted that vibe. And this wouldn't be the first time this show was taken some inspiration from you know, past horror films or thrillers or stuff like that. But its premise is at least from what I can tell, fairly unique. I don't think I've encountered this exact premise before with the psychic physical connection. And I think what makes the episode like genuinely good and not just fun, I think the killer had been handled well with the fun sound effects, and the race against time makes it a solid fun episode. I think what makes it a good episode is the nuance that's introduced with the Lucy character. And what I mean by that is that quite quickly, everyone else thinks that she must be involved in the case, like I said, that she must be helping the perpetrator. She's seen as a suspect, and Mulder is the one who's like, no, I don't think that's the case. I think she's a victim, and I think she's still a victim. She's still suffering because of what this guy did. Everyone else is ready to jump on her and say that she is to blame, at least in part, for this, and wants to throw the book at her. Mulder does not. And I think there's a lot of different little layers to this that I quite like, that feel like they add some weight to the episode, particularly towards the end, because throughout most of the episode, Lucy doesn't want to help. She doesn't think she can help. She keeps saying that over and over, and it's not really that strange, or like, you know, I believe that she thinks she can't help. Like, why would she assume she could? But eventually, you know, by the time she actually crawls back to the old place where he was keeping her, because that's where she was kept, and she kind of goes there almost instinctively, just based on feeling, and she starts talking to Mulder, and she starts giving advice and saying, hey, she's cold, she's wet, and like that eventually leads them to the whole, like, she's at the river type thing. The big ending to this episode is that Amy, the victim, is being drowned by the kidnapper. She is about to be killed, and Mulder and Scully get there and shoot him and try and save her, but it's kind of too late. She's already drowned. But we see at the same time Lucy is starting to cough up water. She is also drowning. So there's basically this self-sacrifice moment that happens at the end where even though it looks like it's a lost cause, Scully actively tells Mulder to stop giving mouth to mouth, to saying, stop doing the CPR. It's not, there's no bringing her back now. She's gone. We can't help her. And then she lives. And I think most people watching this will probably get by this point in the episode that that's because Lucy has taken the bullet for her, that Lucy has died instead. And this feeds into a little conversation that Mulder had with her when he was trying to convince Lucy to help, that Amy's now a victim and that you're strong, you were able to get away, and now she needs your help, she needs your strength. And at the end of the episode, she has done this, but there's also this tragic side to it as well, that Mulder also theorizes that in some ways this was her finally being able to get away from the trauma. She's finally able to leave this kidnapper behind. She's been kind of maybe obsessed, or like he's always been there in her head all this time, and it's only now that like he's gone and now she's been able to die, she's finally at peace in a way that she never was. Because we find out that she had drug problems in the intermediate years. She had drug problems, maybe even prostitution problems, I think they said at one point. It seems like her life was not that great after all this happened. It seems like she's been struggling for a long time and doesn't really know what to do. So there's a really sad side to this story, that it's not, obviously there's a lot of sadness anyway, there's kidnappings, but it's not just, hey, we saved the young innocent person. This other victim was still a victim, and ultimately what she saved Amy from, it wasn't just literally saving her life in the moment, although it seems like she did literally save her life by letting herself be drowned, assuming she made that choice, but it kind of feels thematically like it makes sense that in some level she made the choice to save Amy and let herself be taken instead. But this idea of her making this choice, though, hasn't just saved Amy from literal death, it's also saved the life she's going to have after. Like, Amy has a chance of not being as broken as Lucy was, right? The years after the kidnapping for Lucy was so traumatic, and clearly she was struggling to have a normal life, and she was still quite broken. It seems like this sacrifice might have saved Amy from that part of it. Obviously, she's still going to be shaken up, and there's still going to be some trauma from just what she's experienced so far. But there's a big difference between what she went through and the years that Lucy went through. And I think that's why they make a point of saying that it's not turned sexual yet, that he's not done that part of it yet, and he's not really hurt her yet. I think the reason why they point that out is to kind of show that there's a line that's not been crossed yet, so there's still relative, like, mental, like, I don't know, like, we're not past that line yet in terms of her experience, and that gives us something to save beyond just their life. So I like that element of it. I like that element a lot, because it makes the Lucy character really traumatic and sad, and kind of feels like she got to do one nice thing for the next generation. Like, in many ways her life was already ruined by this awful experience she went through, and it was always living with her, and she was never able to really completely move on from it, seemingly. But she was able to let someone else move on from it. She was able to let this younger person... It's not fair to Lucy. It's not fair to Lucy she went through it. It's not fair that she's now given this choice to maybe save someone else instead of herself. But that's what kind of makes it heroic, is that she still seemingly makes that choice. So it makes that character, I think, a lot more in-depth, and I thought it was genuinely quite sad. One, Mulder, I think his performance in a couple of scenes, I think Duchovny, there's a couple of scenes in this that I thought he did a really particularly good job on. And not that he's bad usually by any means, but there's a couple of emotional scenes that I really liked here. One is when he's trying to give CPR and he won't give up, and when he finally does stop and he's got tears down his face, that's good. He goes up and finds out that Lucy's dead, and he lifts up the sheet and he looks at her. And I thought that was a good moment when he says, "You saved her," because it felt like in that moment that he's the only one who thinks this. He's the only one that knows or believes that Lucy just did something good. Everyone else was considering her a suspect and questioning what she was up to down here. he believes her and believes, and it's kind of sad that no one else does. Now, the final scene after the test results come back in and they determine that she drowned, Scully does seem to believe at that point. So Scully at least does believe what Mulder's been saying at the end of the episode, and enough that she's at least, she's not on board with criminalizing this woman. She's she kind of gives Mulder some advice and helps him sort of try and process a little bit at the end. So that's at least nice that it's not just Mulder by the end. But like, she made this sacrifice, she helped this young girl out, and no one but one or two people will ever know she did that. Which makes it kind of truly selfless in a big way, but it also makes it kind of really sad that she'll never be respected for it. She'll never be celebrated for it. And I think there's a good bit of like bittersweet nuance to that I really like, and I think it added a lot of weight to the episode that otherwise would have been a fun, stalker, we have to save the girl episode. There's nothing wrong with that, just being a bit of fun, but I think this added a bit extra to it for sure. The other scene that Mulder, I thought the performance from Duchovny was really good in, and it was what I really liked about this as well is not just how good the performance was in the moment when Mulder is confronted with something that Scully says, but also the fact that Scully's bringing up something that I already thought about earlier in the episode. And it was impossible not to think about it, honestly. I think they did a good job of, without saying it out loud, making a good bit of the audience think about this. And that is the way that Amy gets kidnapped. She is kidnapped in her bed, in her bedroom, that she shares with a younger sister. So there's a sibling who sees some of it and witnesses some of it and is, possibly going to be traumatized by it. And I immediately thought about Mulder, because Mulder lost his sister, and in at least one version of the events that they've told us, because they changed it at one point, it was when they were lying in bed at night and he was frozen with fear and his sister was taken away. Now, this is not a supernatural kidnapping in and of itself, of course, but the parallels in the experience were a lot to take in. And I think Mulder sympathizing with her, both the victim but also Lucy, about what they've went through, and helping Lucy try and like find this Amy who's been held captive, and feeling like this is one that he can get an answer for. Unlike his sister, there's a maybe more direct, achievable, attainable goal of saving this one. So it instantly felt like there's a reason why this might feel a little bit more personal to him. And Scully recognizes this. In fact, when Mulder keeps saying she's not involved in this, she's innocent, even though they've found the blood matches and all that, which is pretty incriminating to be fair, without the supernatural part to explain it, Scully accuses Mulder of being a bit too close to it, because it's kind of like his sister. And I thought when Mulder says, hey, do you not think I thought of that? He basically gives a little speech about how, well, there are some parallels there. Not every single case or every single thing that he goes through can all be traced back to one childhood incident, and it's ridiculous to suggest it is. I thought the way he delivered those lines was really good. Because it's not like he even says anything that's like super like that convincing in terms of the words, but I thought the way he said it, where he's like, no, I really believe this. This is not just me like trudging through my own past. There's just enough of a quiver and uncertainty in his voice, almost like he's trying to convince himself, but at the same time you kind of want to believe him because we've seen enough to kind of know that there's truth to this. I think that's the one thing about it, is that we, the audience, know that he's right. We know that Lucy's not involved in it, unless it was going to pull some insane twist that we didn't see coming. We kind of know there was like that he's right about this. So we get to just appreciate the fact that he is right, and that even if he is being clouded, he's trying to argue that he isn't. I think he's trying to convince himself that he isn't. But even if he is, he's still right about this, and this is still maybe the best avenue to save her. So obviously the big lead they get is actually not a supernatural lead. The big lead they get is that the kidnapper's car broke down. He got a flat tire, and a mechanic like caught him on the road and tried to offer to help, but he chased him off because he had a kidnapped girl in the boot with the spare tire, or sorry, the trunk for the Americans. And he obviously, when he sees the photograph, he points we're on the map and this is the direction that we're going in. And it's Mulder, of course, who points out, hey, that town that's at the end of that road is where Lucy was found 17 years ago. So he's keeping his new victim in the same place he kept the old victim. It's very ballsy of him. So, yeah, and they do a little quick investigation. They go into the town. Mulder goes to the sort of the photography shop because the guy's a photographer, so he figures the local photography developing place will have have an account with him. So they find where he lives quite quickly. We don't even get to see the scene. He just points out, hey, he'll probably have an account here. Smash cut to their cars all racing down the road to go to his cabin that's in the woods. Pretty secluded, as most kidnappers would probably want to have. So, yeah, I mean, I think the actual investigation's good. I do kind of like that there was some real tangible leads of like a witness who saw him. It wasn't all just coming from Mulder's supernatural thing, but the supernatural thing did help in some ways, and also was more important for the character and emotional side in actually saving the girl at the end. They would have found her, but they'd have found her dead without Lucy's connection to her and the kidnapper. So I think that stuff here really elevates this episode, and I think by the end I was into the emotion of it. I cared about what was going on. I think it's interesting that we end up caring more about Lucy than we do Amy. I think most people will, because she's the one we spend time with and she's the more traumatic figure. Obviously, it's not that we don't care about Amy and we don't want her to be saved. We do, but Lucy's the one that gets more fleshed out. She's the one that gets a bit more time, and our story, frankly, is sadder overall because she already had to go through all of it with this guy. So it's a harder story to kind of like, feel comfortable with. So no, it was very good. I enjoyed the episode quite a bit. I was a bit mixed on the last one, so it was nice to come into this and find myself enjoying the simple stuff early on, but as it developed and gave me more of its meat, I was like, yeah, okay, this is hitting some stuff. I think like some of the other things that are going on in the episode, it's pretty focused, to be honest. There's not a lot of extra things to really talk about. There's like the local agent who's kind of like actually investigating the case, who kind of butts heads with Mulder a little bit. And he fits his role. He's serviceable, and what I mean by that is that he's important in the fact that there has to be someone who's saying Lucy must be a part of this and is guilty of something. We have to have someone who's leading that witch hunt, so that we can have Mulder going up against them and Mulder sticking up for her. But it's all in service of the Lucy and Mulder stuff than it is about this own character or even like the mystery, the case of like getting to the girl itself. He's there to serve a purpose in the Mulder and Lucy stuff. So no, and I think going back to relating this to his sister and this idea that Lucy's someone who disappears as a kid. I mean, she was a bit older than his sister. She was like 12 or 13, I think they said. Actually, no, I think they found her when she was like 13. Because, yeah, they pointed out that she couldn't, because there was they had some footage of her after she was found, and she could barely speak because she must have been taken when she was pretty young and hadn't learned much language yet, basically. So, yeah, like that was pretty, like a dark little detail there. But I think the idea that this Lucy character was taken when she was a kid and turned up later, but she was still broken from the experience. I think that's the part that probably hurts Mulder the most if he is thinking about his sister. This idea that if he does find his sister, what state is she going to be in? If she is still alive, right? If Mulder's sister is out there, like the truth, out there somewhere, right? If Lucy's sister, if Mulder's sister is out there and they do somehow find her, for real, like, is she going to be like broken by the experience, by being held captive? If she has been held captive, we don't know that for sure, but we're, assuming that some of the similarities here, the worst possible outcomes outside of just death, it would make sense that the experience has been traumatic. So is there kind of a worry here that even if he gets his sister back, that his sister will be so broken that she'll never truly be free of what she went through until death? And I think that's like a really sad, dark part to think about, and how that's going through Mulder's head, perhaps, as he's discussing this. So as much as he says this is not about his sister, it's impossible not to think about how this relates back to his experience with his sister, and the potential fears of what might come one day if he even does pull off a miracle and find her. Like, is there only more sadness and tragedy from then on because of what she's went through? you know, it's tough going, but I think that's what made the episode cook, and I enjoyed it quite a bit because it was prodding all these ideas, and it was using its guest characters to really propel one of the lead character stories. This was definitely a Mulder episode and not a Scully episode. Scully's there, of course. She has a couple of good, back and forth with Mulder, but she mostly goes off to investigate medical things when Mulder's off talking to Lucy. It's very much his episode through and through. So, yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts on this episode of The X-Files. I should probably also mention the actor playing the kidnapper. What's his name? Michael Chifo. I think he did a decent job here. I think a lot of it's just like him staring, and then they'll put like some dramatic lighting on him. They'll play some synth music over the top, but he does fine enough. I think Lucy turning in a decent performance, I think, is the more important thing. Tracy Ellis plays Lucy. I will say, I think the first couple of lines she had, I actually thought they weren't very good. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I thought in the moment, I don't know about those line deliveries. You might be a bit of a shoddy guest star. To be fair to her, though, I think as the episode went on, I think she was much, much better than those first couple of lines. And I don't know if it's because she got more like understandable dramatic material to work with, and not just some vague lines at the start. But I think she got a lot better, or at the very least, I think I understood what the performance was doing and going for throughout the rest of the episode a bit more. I think the first scene she's in with Mulder and she talks to him, there was a couple of awkward lines, but I don't know if I'd think that in a repeat viewing, though. That may just be like a first time thing before I clicked with the character kind of thing. But certainly as the episode went on, I think she did well with the role. So, yeah. All right, there you go. Let's have a look and see what's coming up next time on The X-Files. For me, we have an episode called Nisei? Not Nessie, not the Loch Ness Monster. No, Nisei. Nisei or Nisei? I have no idea. They're giving me some titles here that I don't know how to pronounce. This looks like a foreign language, if I'm honest. Anyway, here's the description via IMDb. An alien autopsy videotape and a murder spark Mulder's search for a strange creature. Scully looks for information about her disappearance. Wait, about the murder person's disappearance or her own disappearance? Sounds like her own disappearance from earlier on. That's interesting. Okay. We're getting into alien stuff. This feels like it might be an important episode then, given that tends to be the focal point when the show wants to focus on its key plot. So I don't know how much it'll feed into that, but it seems like it might, based on the fact that we're talking about aliens and we're talking about Mulder. So plus, alien autopsy videotape. I'm looking forward to seeing how creepy the tape is. I can see it being quite grainy, lots of scan lines, like, proper snuff film, but alien footage. So we'll see. That'll be next time. Thank you for joining me. You can, of course, support the content and all the reviews by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or you can become a YouTube member. Either is greatly appreciated. Even a one-time super thanks is greatly appreciated. Any support keeps all of the reviews coming. So thank you once again for joining me. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?